If you thought we were just gonna slap some bearings and seals in this differential, call it good, you haven't been paying attention. Welcome back to the shop. We're on part 2 of our R200 differential rebuild series. Today is all about making it pretty. The case that is, I can't do anything about my face. It's just what I have, and I can't make that any more pretty than it already is, and it's not very pretty. So I fixed the things that I can, which is a differential case. We're gonna be degreasing and cleaning everything up really, really well, and thank you to this channel sponsor, Super Clean Degreasing Products. If you haven't used Super Clean in the past, it is a very powerful degreaser. Do yourself a favor, click some of the links in the description below, get some for yourself and see how amazing this product is. They are a channel sponsor and they do help out. So if you'd like to help me out, pick up some for yourself, click on the link below, order you some, let me know how you like it. So that's gonna make this dirty, messy, greasy job of rear end rebuilding a lot easier. So thank you so very much to Super Clean for providing the products that actually make my life a lot easier. Let's get this thing cleaned up and then we're gonna sandblast it and powder coat it because why not? Like I said, I overdo everything and I can't bring myself to just rattle can it, spray bomb it, or anything like that. If you thought I was gonna spray some 2K epoxy primer on it and some base and clear, I've done that in the past with good results on some other rear ends. I'll drop a picture below. It's beautiful. It came out perfect, but that's for another buddy's of mine car that he put it on and it's working great. For differentials that you don't have to rebuild, I highly recommend painting them. I can't bring myself to use the Rust-Oleum type, 1K, 1-part products out of a rattle can. I always use 2K products because they are always better. There's never a situation in where a 1-part product will outperform a 2-part product, and 2K is 2 parts. That's what it means. You have an activator and a hardener or something of the like. You have a catalyst, you have a part A and B, something to make that product much more stronger. And on suspension parts and rear end differential parts and things like that for the drivetrain, you want it as tough as it can be. What's better than 2K paint, you ask? Well, the next step up is powder coating. So because we have to tear this thing all the way down, or because we did tear this thing all the way down, we're already right there at the stage where there's no other rubber or greases or anything like that. Once we get this thing clean, that's gonna interfere with paint. So we might as well powder coat it. We're gonna do a little bit of sandblasting, throw this thing in the cabinet, clean it up after that, and then get it ready for powder coating. I would like to thank Prismatic Powders for providing the amazing ink black powder coat for this job. It's the blackest powder coat that they sell with a high gloss level. Now some of you might be a little skeptical about throwing high gloss stuff on suspension components. I was too before I started using things like that. I've always been a satin kind of gloss guy for suspension components, but as crazy as it sounds, it's actually a lot easier to clean the glossier it is. Now it does show scratches and things like that relatively easier than something with satin, but it just looks good. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is just drop it in the parts washer. And this is just a washer from Harbor Freight. You don't need one of these. All you need, you could get away with a bucket. The solvent that I have in there is PSC 1000, and it is a solvent-based parts cleaner, and this just helps get the major gunk off. We'll finish it up with Super Clean Degreaser later on in the video, but this helps really kind of break everything down to begin with. All I'm using is a nylon bristle brush, and as you can see here, a paintbrush, just to kind of get in the case and get all of that old gunk broken down and dissolved a little bit. Here you can see the case is fairly clean at this point, and we do need to protect where the bearings are going to go before we actually start the blasting process. Those are where the seals go. So you want to make sure that you're not actually blasting on a bearing surface or a seal surface. So I've got a little aluminum plate here in the bottom of the sandblasting cabinet, and that just keeps most of the sanding blast dust out of the actual case itself. Once again, we will degrease it and clean everything up, but you do not want to be blasting on a bearing surface or a seal surface. So I put those silicone tapered little cones in there to protect as much as possible, and I did one on the pinion side of it as well. Here I'm just using a little 3-inch Roloc green bristle brush to clean up the mating surface for the diff cover. And then what you want to do before powder coating any cast part is you want to soak it in degreaser. We got a 5-gallon bucket here filled with super clean degreaser, and we soak, as you can probably see, you can't fit the whole diff in there with this 5-gallon bucket, so maybe get a bigger bucket and more super clean product. But I soak each side of this for at least 30 minutes, and you want to soak it, not just scrub it down and rinse it off. Casting of any type is very porous, especially with rear ends that have been used. New cast parts, you can probably get away with things in a little different manner, but especially used stuff. We cleaned it with the PSC 1000 solvent, and now we're degreasing it after sandblasting to make sure everything is really clean, and super clean degreaser definitely helps that happen. So I soak each side for at least 30 minutes and then come back in and scrub all of any remaining sandblasting grit and or dust that may be trapped somewhere in the casting pores all along or inside and around the case. And then what I'll do after this process is I will rinse it off with just regular water, and then I'm going to rinse it off with denatured alcohol, which is typically what you would do right before powder coating. But because this has been used before, what I want to do is go ahead and basically gas out this part, and all that means is you heat the oven up to about 50 to 100 degrees hotter than you're going to be powder coating at. So this powder coat that I'm going to be using, the ink black from Prismatic Powders, bakes out around 400 degrees. So I'm going to heat the oven up to between 450 and 500 degrees, and I'm going to put that part in there for double the amount of time that it would normally take for that part to cure. And this is part metal temperature. Obviously this is a cast part, it's very thick, it takes a long time to come up to temperature. So I use an infrared thermometer, non-contact thermometer, just a little laser pointer basically that can tell the temperature of the part as it's heating up. This powder would flow out at about 200 something degrees and start to cure at 400 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. I'd have to look at the actual ticket just to make sure that that's correct information, but let's go with that for now. Let's say it bakes out at 400 degrees or cures at 400 degrees for 10 minutes at part metal temperature. So when this case reaches 400 degrees in the oven, then the timer for 10 minutes starts. So during the gas out process, before powder coating, which is what we're going to be doing here momentarily, off camera, I'm going to heat this case up to at least 450 degrees for double the amount of cure time. And that just allows those pores to really open up, and any kind of grit, grease, or grime that wasn't on the surface or just below the surface can actually be baked out of the part. And that's something very important, especially for used cast parts that have been seen kind of abused, such as like a differential wood. You're going to get grease and grime all over these things. As they're being used in the rear of a car, they do produce leaks, and that's kind of the reason we're rebuilding this thing to begin with, is a lot of the seals were leaking and it was covered in grit and grease. So once that part actually kind of reaches that in its lifespan, especially cast parts, they're very porous to begin with. So once they start having leaks and being used, the inside of it is obviously covered and coated and filled with oil. And then once the seals start leaking, well, now the outside is covered in oil, and casting again is porous, so it will start to soak up a lot of that oil and grease, and that will wreak havoc on any positive powder coating outcome. So any cast parts I powder coat, especially used ones, get double treatment. They get the solvent-based degrease initially, they get sandblasted, they get the full soak and super clean degreaser after sandblasting to make sure they're really, really clean, and more importantly, to get any kind of remaining grit out of there. You can't just blow them off with an air gun and expect all of that sandblasting grit to basically disappear after that. So I scrub everything down with 100% concentrated super clean degreaser, and then I gas it out at 450 to 500 degrees for double the amount of cure time. Once that is done, I put it back in degreaser for a second round of complete soak and scrubbing after that. So once it's been gassed out, most of the time you will see a little brownish film or something on the surface. If it's really bad, I will re-blast that. If it's not so bad, I'll just re-degrease it. So I'll soak it in another 30-minute to an hour-long session of degreaser, and then come back and scrub everything down again, rinse it off completely, and then we will rinse it off one final time right before powder coating with denatured alcohol. Now there's all kinds of phosphate treatments and pre-treatments and things like that before powder coating, but I'm just a home shop and I just use denatured alcohol. I've had good success with it and I don't see a reason to change what's working. So if you have a better alternative or a valid reason why I should be using a pre-treat or some other type of product other than denatured alcohol before powder coating, let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking to learn new things. But that's pretty much my process as it sits right now, especially for cast iron parts that have been used. So hopefully that helps explain some things. This is the diff cover that I actually powder coated in a previous batch of parts a long time ago. And then here's just a quick little cover I made for the rear of the diff to be able to put some hangers in it. That way I wouldn't have to attach a hanger anywhere through any of the mounting points, and I could keep most of the powder out of the inside of the case. That's not something you want. The way powder coating works is it electrically charges out of the tip of the nozzle of the powder coating gun, and the part itself is grounded. So all the metal would be attached to a ground wire, and then the positively charged particles would flock or attract to that negatively grounded metal part that's hung from the rack. If I didn't actually close this differential up, it would have powder on the inside just as much as it would the outside, and that would not be good. So take your time here, cover everything up, and then here you can see how I'm just using just some little quick hangers, and actually drilled a whole bunch more holes in this because once I hung this heavy diff, it put a little bow in this just a little 16 gauge quick little plate that I made. So I actually put all of the bolts, actually re-drilled all the bolts for that cover, and then hung it properly. That way everything will be perfectly sealed, and you can see it even bowing in that picture. So again, I want to keep all of the powder out of the inside of the case. You can see the silicone tapered rings. There's one in the pinion along with some tape on the pinion. Again, you don't want any of that powder to be building a mill thickness where a seal goes or a bearing sits or anything like that. And you definitely don't want any of this powder getting attracted to the inside, the internal workings of the differential case. So make sure everything is completely sealed as good as possible. And here you can just see I'm spraying it down really, really well, soaking the part with that denatured alcohol that we were talking about earlier, just to give it one final sweep. Good little wash down and make sure everything's clean, all the grit, grime, everything after that initial gas out is off of there. And big shout out to Prismatic Powders. Their stuff is awesome. And here you can see the little mad scientist look going on. Nitrile gloves, full Tyvek suit, respirator, and splash-proof chemical goggles. Now, I mentioned in some previous episodes during the paint and bodywork that those carbon filters are actually only good on the respirator for 7 days. Now, I do extend that to 14 days when I'm spraying, but what do I do with those cartridges after the fact? Again, I'm a home shop, and I try to reuse all the things I can. For this stuff, there's no VOCs, there's no volatile organic compounds or vapors that are being put off from the powder, but there is a lot of dust. And that dust is exactly what you want to keep out of your lungs, and that's what I use the old expired kind of cartridges for. So after I get through painting, and it's been 7 to 14 days since that Respirator cartridge has been opened, I stick it over in another stack. It's still good for filtering out particles. It's just not good for VOC filtration anymore, or vapors anymore. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in when you're doing paint and body, and you definitely don't want to be breathing in this type of dust when you're doing powder coating work. You see, the way powder coating works is that little yellow line that I hooked up is a ground wire. Now that's the ground wire that runs through the machine. You don't typically want to rely on that because it's got to go through the same power source that's feeding the machine all the way back to your electrical panel and then out to your meter where your ground rod for your electrical is placed. Now if you look in the bottom part of this rack, I've got a big old ground clamp that looks like it belongs on a welder connected to some double-aught welding wire that goes directly outside to the shop to its own dedicated grounding rod. I hook up that little yellow wire just in case, just to provide some extra grounding. I don't really know if you're supposed to do that or not. I've seen it on the forums both ways, that you should, or you should only have one grounding source, or you should have multiple. So it has worked both ways for me. If I should or shouldn't be doing that, let me know in the comments below. But you see all this dust. The idea is basically that the dust comes out of the gun positively charged from the inner workings of the gun. There's like a little ionization ring in there, and it basically works on the same principle as static electricity. The gun and the machine agitate the powder. There's a little air pump in there, and it pushes it out through that big thick gray wire and then electrically charges those particles as they come out of the tip of the gun. Now, because they're positively charged, they are attracted to that grounded part or negatively charged part until the thing's completely covered in whatever powder you're applying to it, and then you roll this rack into the oven and you heat it up and you bake it just like you would bake cookies. Now, in the interest of safety, I'm always trying to present you guys how you can be more safe in the shop, and you see my chemical resistant goggles there along with my older used respirator that's still good for particle filtration. The big reason I'm wearing all this stuff, the rubber gloves, the Tyvek suit, the respirator, and those splash proof goggles, isn't that I'm that scared of dust. It's that as I'm using the machine, the particles that are coming out of there remain positively charged. They are attracted to negatively charged or grounded parts. I'm standing on concrete. Therefore, the powder does not care whether it's going to a negatively charged differential or grounded differential, or me, myself, and my body become grounded because I'm standing on ground. So I try to isolate myself electrically as much as possible, but more importantly, I don't want my body to become that negatively charged, grounded piece of material that these positively charged particles are then attracted to. They will get in your eyes, they'll get in your lungs, and that's stuff that you, again, do not want in your body. They'll get on your skin. If you do this without a Tyvek suit, I promise you, you're going to be covered in powder coating. Okay, now obviously you're not going to bake it on your skin. It's very easy to blow it off and stuff, but this stuff is super fine. That's not stuff I want in my eyes. That's not stuff I want going up my nose or in my mouth, into my lungs, or even resting on my skin until I take a shower. I've done it before, and I've gotten lazy in just one little bitty small part, and then you go and you can see most of the pressurized dust is going away from me. Even on camera, it looks like there's not very much coming back my way at all. I promise you, if I wasn't wearing the Tyvek suit and the rubber gloves and everything else, when I went to take a shower after having not worn one before, the shower goes black because there's all that little fine dust that gets in your hair and on your skin and everywhere that you don't realize it's getting. So if you are going to take powder coating seriously, even as a hobby, even as a home hobbyist, take the safety aspects serious along with it. So that's all I'm asking for you guys. It literally doesn't take any more financial obligation from you other than the splash proof chemical goggles, and those are like $10. The blue rubber gloves you're going to have in your shop, the Tyvek suit's the same Tyvek suit that I use for the paint and body, so I didn't have to buy another one there. The respirator, again, is an older used respirator, still good for particle filtration. You do have to replace the pads on them a little bit more, the pre-filters, a little bit more often when you're doing this type of stuff, but it's stuff I already had, so just take the effort. wear the proper safety gear, and continue enjoying these hobbies for as long as you possibly can. That's all I'm asking. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. The thing is clean, and boy, does it look good. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the results. I'm super stoked. Thank you to Super Clean for allowing me to clean it really, really easy. And thank you to Prismatic Powders for providing a high quality powder coating for me to be able to powder coat this thing and have it looking like show quality finish. So I gotta say, I'm super impressed. I've used obviously a lot of other different powder coats in the past. I do have an amazing little home built powder coat setup. If you guys would like more information or want me to do a separate video on my powder coating setup for home use, drop a comment below and maybe I'll do a little powder coating tour or something like that in the future and show you guys how I built that oven and the type of powder coating equipment that I use and why. If that's of any interest to you, let me know in the comments below and I'll get around to making that video just as soon as I can. I've used some other powders in the past. And I gotta say, powder is a lot like paint. You do pay for quality products, and there is a massive difference in the outcome that you get from each of those. A lot of the cheaper powders that you're gonna find in the retail stores or some of the other catalogs and things like that, they're gonna be at a price point that's gonna be pretty attractive when compared to something that looks like it's the same thing but almost double the price. I'm here to tell you there is a difference. The cheaper products, even though it might be 5 pounds of powder, probably have 2 pounds of filler in it. And what filler does is it doesn't attach to the product. It just fluffs up what you think you're buying in the bottle, which is more powder. All that stuff just falls on the ground. So it doesn't actually attract itself to the part and it doesn't actually bake on it. So you're really paying, you're getting 5 pounds of stuff and you're only getting about 3 pounds of active ingredient that can charge to the actual part that you're trying to powder coat. So keep that in mind when you're comparing this stuff. I know Prismatic powders pretty well. I've used some of their other stuff where I haven't showcased it in a video. They're top quality. I've used a lot of other Tiger Dry Lac, Sherwin-Williams, and things like that in the past, and they're great for bulk. Like if you need to buy a 50-pound box of something and do a lot of parts, they're incredible for that. Their price points are really, really good. But there's some more fillers in that stuff. So I have, especially when you're working in a garage type environment and you go to, it's messy as it is already, you go to start spraying that stuff and next thing you know, a 20-foot circle around where you're working is covered in powder on the ground that you have to vacuum or sweep or something like that after the project. So it doesn't make for very much fun when powder coating. It just makes for a lot of mess, the cheaper products you use. And I'm not saying Tiger Dry Lac or Sherwin-Williams is a cheaper product. Those are both products I've used personally. I'm mainly talking about the other products that I don't use, which come from your hobby type stores. Keep that in mind. Take it for what you will. I've blown away by the quality of Prismatic powders. If you're interested in checking out some of their powder coating products, they also make ceramic coating, which is Cerakote, and obviously tons and tons of powders. So I'm pretty happy with the results I got. I'm pretty happy with the way the product has performed as far as the application goes. A lot of the cheaper products, you're gonna get a lot of fillers and that stuff doesn't attract to the part. It just falls on the ground and makes a mess that you have to clean up while you're in the middle of a project, and that's no fun. This stuff, while I didn't use a ton of powder on this differential, there wasn't any on the ground. And that's a huge win for me because I hate cleaning up as I go. I just like to make a big mess and then clean it all up at the end. And I'm in the middle of this project and I didn't even have to stop and clean that up. So I'm pretty happy with that. Thank you to Prismatic Powders for providing and manufacturing great, amazing quality products. If you want to check out their stuff, I got a link in the description below. They are not a channel sponsor. I just like to promote the products that I use that I'm happy with. And maybe if you guys have a powder coating setup or something you want to get into as a hobby type thing in your garage, then it helps you when I provide you with good information as to what works and what necessarily doesn't. So Prismatic powders, thumbs up. Super clean, thumbs up. Speaking of thumbs up, if you like this video, go ahead and click that thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, click that subscribe button. We're well on our way to hitting that 1,000 subscriber milestone where we can turn on monetization for the channel. And then all of those little pennies that I get to earn off of the ads that you're seeing anyway will go into crazy builds, rebuilds, and restorations that you guys are enjoying all along the way. If you have any questions about what we did or why, leave a comment below and I'll do my best to reply as quickly as possible. I appreciate you guys as always, and until next time, thanks for watching this one.